Hi DIY doers, I'm Belle and welcome to my workshop. In today's video I'm going to explain what sublimation is and how it works, what tools you'll need to get started, and some safety tips. Let's get into it. So what is sublimation? So the term sublimation means to go from a solid state into a gas state without entering a liquid state. So in our case, the dye on the paper is a solid state, which then heats up, transforming it into a gas state. Then it is pressed and permanently bonds to the fabric fibers of the t-shirt, and then entering a solid state again. So what are you going to need for sublimation? So first, you don't need a cutting machine to do sublimation. Sublimation is its own type of crafting. However, there is a couple exceptions to this rule, which I will touch on later. So sublimation is very specific as it relies on a chemical reaction between the dye and the blank. So first, let's talk about the sublimation dye or ink. You need a dedicated sublimation printer. This sublimation printer can only be used for sublimation. You can convert a printer to be a sublimation printer, or you can go and buy a dedicated sublimation printer. I am in the process of making a video about converting my Epson EcoTank printer to a sublimation printer. So if you're curious on how to do that, please stay tuned for that video. So there are dedicated sublimation printers out there, like the Sawgrass, but these printers tend to be very expensive. In Australia, I haven't seen one less than $1,000. Okay, so you need a sole printer for sublimation. Within that printer, you need sublimation ink. Sublimation ink is more translucent than regular ink. I personally prefer the brand Hippo. So you need a printer with sublimation ink inside of it, and you need sublimation paper. So special sublimation paper. Make sure it's got sublimation somewhere on the label. Now I do want to note, after you print your image onto sublimation paper, the image will look dull and muted. This is totally normal. So your blacks may look grey. This is totally normal. The vibrant colours will come back after it is pressed onto your blank. So we've got our printer with our sublimation ink inside of it, and we've got our sublimation paper, and we've printed a design on that paper. We need something to put onto it. So we need some sublimation blanks. So in the crafting world, a blank is anything that you can put a design on. So cups, mugs, t-shirts, you name it. But where it's different for sublimation, it needs to be polyester or have a special sublimation coating on it for the chemical reaction to work. So the most common blank for sublimation and the easiest to get into is polyester t-shirts, polyester jumpers, that sort of thing. It has to be polyester for the chemical reaction to work. So the higher count of polyester, the better the chemical reaction will work. I don't recommend anything under 75% polyester count. I think if you do go lower, the pressing can be a problem. the image might not be as vibrant, and as you wear the item and use it, it can kind of start to fade. So another thing to note when choosing your sublimation blanks is that sublimation ink is translucent. So if you get a sublimation print and try and press it onto a black shirt, you're not going to see anything. I recommend white for great results. Light colors are okay, like your creams and greys, but you may notice the color from your shirt coming through the print. So you might see grey coverage over your beautiful design. However, there is a way to get around it and sublimate onto a black shirt by using sublimation heat transfer vinyl or iron-on. So essentially you use your cutting machine to cut out the design, so like do an offset to cut out the design shape in the Sublimation HTV. You then apply that to your shirt, then you get the sublimation print and then apply that to the HTV. This does allow you to sublimate onto darker colored shirts and still look really good. However, it is not as permanent as doing it on the fabric itself. So that design will only last as long as that HTV does. So to start, I do recommend getting into t-shirts and jumpers and things. However, there is a wide range of variety of different sublimation blanks like mugs, glasses, tumblers, keychains, earrings, etc. Just make sure it says sublimation compatible. So you have your printer, sublimation ink inside the printer, sublimation paper, and you have your sublimation blank. Now you need a heat source to get that chemical reaction working. So I have not had any success using sublimation with an iron, a household iron. Just doesn't work. It doesn't get hot enough, you cannot get enough pressure, and it's uneven. So I truly recommend getting a dedicated heat press, a big one or one of the handheld easy presses, that's fine. Just something that you can change the pressure and the temperature on. For mugs and things, you can get tumbler heat presses, you can get mug presses, and you can also get standalone little sublimation ovens to do different types of things, like a slate photograph type thing. You can actually put that into the sublimation oven. Now this sublimation oven is a dedicated oven only for sublimation. You cannot cook in it, you cannot do anything else in it, you can only do sublimation in it. Okay, so you have your printer, your sublimation ink inside the printer, your sublimation paper, your sublimation blank, and a heat source. So let's talk safety for a moment. So your blank, whether it is a mug, t-shirt, tumbler, bag, whatever, is going to come out very, very hot. So sublimation temp is normally around 180 degrees Celsius to 205 degrees Celsius. That's hot. You ain't gonna be touching it with your hands. So you're going to need some heat resistant gloves to protect your hands. You can also get, there's like these little oven mitt things. They work fine as well. And then you need something to protect your surface, because you're not going to hold that thing while it cools down, because it can take like 10 minutes to cool down. So I always use a silicone mat, so I can place my mug or cup or whatever on there and let it cool, and then I can peel off the wrapping and look at my design. For t-shirts, I normally put it on my kitchen table because that's nice and cool. T-shirts don't get as hot, but they still get hot. I wouldn't touch where the design is with your hands. So lastly, the sublimation process is a chemical reaction, and along with that comes chemical smells and odors, which means you need to have a well ventilated area. I also wear masks because I've got them for my resin printing anyway, and I'm quite sensitive to smells, so I get headaches and things quite easily, so I put a mask on. So after all that, you might be thinking that sounds super expensive and seems like a lot of work, and I don't blame you. Sublimation is quite huge to get into and to get started. So in saying that, this is an alternative to doing sublimation yourself. So this is called infusible ink. This is the Cricut brand. There are a couple products that are like this. I haven't tried them though, but I've had really good success with the Cricut infusible ink. So this is pretty much the process of sublimation, but instead of printing out a picture or whatever, you actually have these infusible ink sheets. So you have these infusible ink sheets that your cutting machine cuts out the design in, and then you can apply this to your blank. Note how this is very muted compared to the box. So after I press this, it's gonna actually turn out like this. So that's how muted it is. I don't even think you can see, like it's very, very muted. Yeah, so you can cut out designs and things and press it onto mugs and shirts and other things. So it has its pros and cons. You can't really do intricate designs as the infusible ink is pretty stiff and is not that easy to weed. But some good points is you don't have to buy an expensive printer and have the frustrations and problems of converting your own printer and setting all that up. So it is a nice alternative for people that still want to try it out to get into it. One thing I did want to mention as well, you can actually store your sublimation prints. So I store them in a container like this one, not this one, but like this one, and I put butcher's paper down, and then I put the sublimation print, and then I put butcher's paper on top of that, and then a sublimation print, and then butcher's paper, and so on and so on. And then I store this in a dark area that doesn't get super hot and doesn't get super cold. So those storing instructions do go for infusible ink as well. So you want to have the infusible ink sheets in a dark container and in an area that doesn't get extremely hot and extremely cold. Well, I hope I answered some of your sublimation questions today and what you will need to get started. I'm going to have more sublimation videos like converting your own Epson EcoTank printer to a sublimation printer. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on that one. You guys have a craftastic day, and I will see you in the next one.